Welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast sponsored by CBD Life UK. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and tonight we're going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night 132 in Kallang, Singapore. Before we start though, for those that do follow my social accounts on Facebook and Twitter, you will know that I've been running a competition over the last 3 days through my Facebook page. This was a joint competition between CBD Life and Newsome MMA, with over £100 worth of products to be won. Unfortunately, Facebook refused to take my money and promote the post, which I won't go into right now, but it's something that I'm really not happy about at all. But that was good news for the people that did enter, because this gave them a greater chance of winning some cool prizes. As I said, I was going to announce the winner on this podcast, and that's exactly what I'm about to do. So congratulations to Declan Muldowney, who is the winner of this competition. I will be in touch to sort your prizes out, man. And thank you to everybody else who did take part in the competition as well. And with that aside, let's break some fights down. As always, I've got my bets listed for you guys. I'll break those down in full for you. Anything else that I haven't bet, I will reel off on the quick fire round at the end of the podcast. I'll give you a pick, a method of victory, and a reason why I haven't made the bet. So the first full breakdown of the podcast, we've got the main event of the evening. We've got Donald Cowboy Cerrone against Leon Edwards. Now, this is a fight I'm really confident about. It's a fight that I eyed up straight away for a bet as soon as I seen the fight was announced, and I've got 3 units on Leon Edwards at -145. Now, Leon Edwards is a fighter that's really coming into his own now. He's on a massive win streak. You know, he's beaten some good guys. He's beaten Tumenov. He's beaten Vicente Luque, and I actually think Cerrone, compared to Luque, could potentially be a little bit of a step down for him in regards to skill wise. And what I mean by that, I just think right now Luque is a tougher fight for anybody than Cowboy Cerrone. And I mean, no disrespect to Cowboy Cerrone, I think he's still a good fighter, but I think he's a fighter that is potentially on his way out very slowly, is declining. He doesn't look like the fighter that he used to be. Now Edwards brings pace, pressure, and heavy intensity to all his fights, and that is something that we've seen Cowboy Cerrone really crumble against lately. We saw it against Darren Till. Till from the get-go went straight at him in his face, really putting the pressure on Cowboy, and he didn't like it whatsoever. And I think in parts Yancy Medeiros was having success against Cowboy as well, but I think Yancy really took his foot off the gas, and that allowed Cowboy to come forward and really start working his game. So I think that's where Cowboy really flourished in that fight and managed to get the finish. But the other thing that Cowboy really struggles against, and we've seen this lately in a couple of fights that I'll mention in a minute, is fighting against southpaw fighters that have got kicks. So we saw that against Masvidal in particular, and again, that was a fight where Cerrone really didn't look in the fight at all, really. Masvidal, from the start, was having success and really landing those body kicks. He put him down at the end of round 1. Potentially that shouldn't have even gone into round 2, but it did, and then the fight ended shortly after that. So, you know, the fighters that bring, like I've said, pace and pressure, along with being a southpaw and also using kicks as well, these are combinations, and this is a type of sort of style now that Cowboy's really struggling against, and this is exactly what Leon Edwards is. Leon Edwards, just something that I noticed watching tape against Luque. I can't remember if it was round 2 or 3, but he hit Luque with a couple of really hard body kicks that, you know, sort of made the crowd ooh a bit, and also me at home watching it thinking, damn, that, you know, they were strong, solid body kicks. And I'm surprised Luque even took them. You know, he didn't show any signs of wincing, but I can guarantee that he felt them. Now, I think if Edwards hits Cowboy with even one of them, I'm not sure Cowboy stays on his feet after taking one of those kicks. And if he does stay on his feet after one of those kicks, his hands will be lower, because he'll be looking to block those body kicks to stop another one coming in. At that point, Leon Edwards can really get his boxing working, really get his hands going, and he can start headhunting Cowboy while his hands are low. And then eventually Cowboy's hands are going to come up, and then he can go to the body again. I see a lot of paths to victory with Leon Edwards on the feet. I genuinely think he has a real advantage if he's the one putting the pressure on, which I think he will be, because he's shown nothing else in all the fights and all the tape that I've watched. He's the one that seems to like coming forward and really put the pressure on his opponent. So I would be very surprised if for some reason he was on the back foot moving backwards. Yeah, I just can't envisage. Excuse me, I just can't envisage that happening, and I do think he's going to be the one dictating the pace of the fight. Cowboy doesn't fight. His best when he's moving backwards, and we saw that with Yancy Medeiros. We really saw both sides to it, because I think Yancy was having a lot of success earlier on. You know, he was the one connecting, but that's because he was the one pushing forward and dictating the pace. The second that Yancy stepped off the pace, took his foot off the gas, and was the one moving backwards, that's when Cerrone really started having success, and that's eventually where the finish came from. So I think it's imperative that Leon Edwards really does keep the pressure on. But like I say, I've not seen any evidence of Edwards, you know, fighting on the back foot and not wanting to come forward and put the pressure on. But he doesn't stand in front of his opponents either. You know, he don't walk forward carelessly. He's only absorbed roughly around 1.9 strikes per minute, which is quite low in the UFC. He really doesn't get hit too often at all. And I actually think in this fight, Cerrone will be happy to stand with Edwards up until the point he realises he's not having a lot of success. A little bit similar to how we saw with Cerrone and Darren Till. You know, Cerrone was fine on his feet until Till really started to swarm him a bit. And then he started shooting for takedowns. He did get a takedown, Till got up. You know, and then at that point, I think it really demoralised Cerrone, thinking, you know, it took a lot for me to get Till down, and he just stood straight back up. And ultimately, I could see a similar thing happening here. I think Cerrone will eventually start going for takedowns on Edwards. But Edwards has got a good ground game. He's got good scrambles. He's got a good get-up game as well. So it don't worry me too much if Cerrone's looking for takedowns early on. It's a 5-round fight. And I think Cerrone will realise quickly that A, Edwards is very tough to take down. B, he's going to be able to scramble if your entries aren't great. And C, if you do get him down, he'll probably be able to stand up or maybe reverse as well. So, again, doesn't worry me too much if Cowboy starts shooting on Edwards. Now, I will talk about the things that do worry me, or the thing that does worry me, because no bets, I don't believe any bets are absolutely golden where you're not going to have any worries whatsoever. What I do worry about with Leon Edwards is he has got the tendency to maybe over-grapple, especially in situations where he probably doesn't need to. So I'm trying to think of a scenario here. Yeah, the Peter Sabata fight is a good example, because Peter Sabata, you know, he was beating on the feet. Sabata was really, you know, not sure when to come in, and really not sure when to start, you know, letting his hands go and exchanging, and struggling with distance completely. And Leon Edwards was cracking him. He was winning the fight. Sabata's path to victory was the ground game, because primarily he's a grappler. So at this point, you're thinking, well, Leon Edwards is doing everything he needs to do. He's staying off the mat, he's staying away from the grappling, and he's just beating him up on the feet. But then he started going for takedowns and starting to clinch up and grapple. It was, and to be fair to his credit, it was working. He was having success in top control. Sabata really didn't look dangerous from bottom, and he really didn't look like he could stop the takedown. So at this point, you're thinking, well, you know, Edwards probably shouldn't have done that, but he's doing okay. He's winning the fight. That's great. Now, my worry here is Cowboy does have some good submissions off his back. He's got long limbs. He's flexible as well. Can wrap up rubber guard, wrap up triangles, hit arm bars. He's good at submissions off his back. So I think that my real worry here is if Edwards is grappling and getting the takedowns and landing in guard and not being able to pass. And I think when you put that in context, when that's your only worry, because I think if Edwards does get him to the mat and he does pass into half guard at least, I think he's safe. I think he's good. At that point, I'll be happy. But it's just getting the takedowns, either landing in guard or Cerrone wrapping guard up, or you know, just somehow ending up in guard. But like I say, when you put that in context of everything else that's going to go off in the fight and potentially going to happen, I don't think that, even though it is a worry, it's not a huge concern, because it's just one small aspect. But that's Cerrone's path to victory, in my opinion. I'm not sure Cerrone can beat him on the feet. I'm not sure Cerrone can have enough success on top with Edwards on his back to win the fight, because Edwards won't accept that position. He will get up, scramble, or try and reverse. So I'm really confident in Leon Edwards here. Ultimately, I do see Edwards looking to threaten with grappling and takedowns early, but I do think he'll have more success on the feet. Like I've mentioned, it's a 5-round fight. I do believe Edwards will grow into the fight, and as the fight goes on, I think he'll apply more volume, more pressure, and eventually I think he's going to get the finish. I think he's going to TKO Donald Cerrone now. This could come a couple of ways. I could definitely see him just peppering him, headhunting with shots and landing a hard shot that puts him down, ultimately finishing him off with strikes with the ref stepping in to save Cowboy. Or, as I mentioned earlier, I could definitely see a body kick as well. A body kick that drops Cowboy, and then, if again he finished him off via TKO. So 3 units, Leon Edwards at -145. Now the next full breakdown, the next bet, we've got Ovince St. Preux versus Tyson Pedro. I've got 2.5 units on Tyson Pedro at -133. I'm not huge on OSP at all. He's had a lot of fights in the UFC. I'm still a little unsure of exactly what he's good at, except the Von Flue choke. Fair play to him, he's got a lot of Von Flue chokes. It's a submission that not many people can say that they've tapped somebody out with. Having said that, though, I do think this is a step up for Pedro. Pedro's coming off a win against Safarov, I think it was, yeah. So Sapabek Safarov, which, I do think Pedro was the better fighter there. I did have question marks in that fight. I didn't know how Pedro was going to cope with the wrestling, especially coming off a loss against Latifi via wrestling. So, I was a little unsure there, but I do feel that this is a step up for Pedro. I know he's fought Latifi, but he was just totally out. It was just the wrong time to fight Latifi, I think, in that spot. Latifi really did dominate him. But like I said, having said that, I think it's a step up. But it's one that I feel he's ready for. OSP's got a lot of wins in the octagon, but OSP seems to really crumble when he's fighting the better opposition. So I think that excuse me, I think that OSP is a bit of an enigma for some people. Like people don't seem to know what you're gonna get with him, and to a degree, I understand that, but I think that it's more of a case when you're watching tape, you're struggling to stylistically match OSP up against his opponent, and if his opponent's not very easy to read and very easy to tape, then it sort of does make it quite confusing, because, like I mentioned, OSP doesn't really have that one area where he flourishes and stands out, so it can be quite tough. But I do feel that Tyson Pedro in this spot is easier to read. Now, when you're looking at OSP's record, his last 3 wins have come against Corey Anderson, a fight that he was about to lose 30-27 before he landed the head kick KO. And Anderson has proven that he hasn't got the best chin either. Yushin Akami, who came up to fight OSP on short notice, jumped up a couple of weight divisions. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been in the weight division. He shouldn't have been fighting OSP. He shouldn't have been in the cage at that point. And then the win before that, we're looking at Marcos de Lima, which de Lima's shown he's a 500 fighter. He's not a fighter that's ever gonna, in my opinion, break into the top of the division. And then you look at his losses. You've got Ilir, Latifi, Ozdemir, Manua, John Jones, Teixeira, Bader. What this shows me is that OSP is a good fighter, an okay fighter, until he fights somebody that's better than him, a better competition. And I feel that Pedro is this better competition, and I think he will have trouble in this fight. OSP tends to rely on his height, his reach, his strength, and his physical size over opponents that he beats. But he's not going to have that against Pedro here. Pedro is huge himself. I think they might be the same in height. I think OSP might have a slight reach advantage or a slight height advantage, one of the two, but they're virtually identical in the words of Mike Goldberg. So I feel that the size advantage, the physical advantage, OSP is not going to have in this fight. And Pedro, for some reason, he's weird looking bigger every fight. You go back and watch the Khalil Roundtree fight, the dude doesn't look half as big as what he looks now. He's filled out for sure in his career in the UFC. Now, I think Pedro is at that age now. He's 26. He's at that age where he's going to be rapidly improving from fight to fight. He's got fighters such as Tied to Ivasa and Mark Hunt in his gym as well. So it's fighters that are going to develop him and really get the best out of him in training, in the game plans, and then ultimately in the cage as well. So I think right now you can always expect to see a better Tyson Pedro than what you saw last fight, and that's just the way of the MMA world. He's just at that age, that in that spot of his career where we're going to notice huge differences positively during each fight. Now, Pedro's an orthodox fighter. OSP usually switches stances to make sure that he can land his powerful kick to the open body of his opponent. We saw that with Latifi. Latifi kept switching stances so he wouldn't get hit by those kicks. But every time he switched, OSP switched as well. It was quite clever. And it was working until OSP got floored. So I think we can expect to see the same here. I don't think Pedro will switch stance as much. And the reason being is, even though that's a great weapon for OSP, he loves that kick to the open body. Pedro's also got some heavy leg kicks, heavy low kicks himself. So OSP will be switching stances to make sure he's got that open body. But I think Pedro can definitely take advantage of that as well. And he'll definitely be firing back also. So I just think that overall, Pedro is gonna have more tools here. I think he's got better hands. I think he's gonna be able to use his kicks. He's got decent takedowns as well. OSP is notoriously known for not having the greatest of takedown defense. And Tyson Pedro's got a killer submission game. You know, you saw that with the Kimura finish against Safarov. Safarov was the one that took Pedro down. Pedro got hold of the Kimura. He swept him. He had the Kimura locked in. It was sort of, is he going to get it, is he not? And then bang, that left leg comes straight over Safarov's neck in order to really tighten that Kimura up. It was beautiful to watch. So I just think Pedro's got this all-round game, and I just feel that he's going to be slightly better in every area. I don't think he's going to be leaps and bounds better, like massively better, but I just feel he's going to be a bit better in every area. And then when I think about the developments it's making at its current age, I feel that he's probably going to be a bit better than what I think he's going to be as well. OSP doesn't have the greatest cardio, especially when he's the one being pressured. I do think Pedro's going to be dictating the pace of the fight. I don't see him moving backwards. And if he does move backwards, I don't think it'll be for long, because I think every time OSP will come in, Pedro will crack him with something, and it'll sort of halt OSP, and it'll let Pedro move forward himself. I think he'll really wear him down over the course of the fight. Now, I'm not sure whether Pedro will put OSP down with strikes or take him down and lock in a submission. I'm still a little bit unsure on that. I don't have to be clear on it, because either way, I do think Tyson Pedro is going to win inside the distance, and I think he'll get OSP out of their sort of, mid to late fight. So yeah, 2.5 units on Tyson Pedro at -133. So the next fight that we've got, I'll just take a little bit of drink of water, is we've got Felipe Arantes against Song Yadong. Now, Yadong is a very, very curious case. There's been a lot of talk and discussions over this last week or so, and it's something, I'm not saying I brought it to light, but I didn't see anybody else mention this until I actually spotted it watching tape. So about 4 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, in 2013, I watched tape from ONE FC where Yadong was fighting there. He was listed as 20 years old. He's listed as 20 years old right now on the UFC website, Wikipedia, Sherdog. Sorry, not Wikipedia, Sherdog and Topology. So he's listed as 20 years old everywhere, but he was 20 years old 5 years ago. So this is going to be one of two things. He relied back in the day to get into ONE FC, which I believe is the truth. I do believe the UFC's got the right age now. I do trust that they've got that right. But I do believe he was 15 when he was fighting in ONE FC, which is just nuts. Or 16, sorry, he was one of the two. I do believe that he'd done that just to get into ONE FC. I think if he'd told him he was 15 or 16, they wouldn't have let him in the cage. So yeah, I do think he was that young. And then when you've watched a little bit of further tape, he's like 23. So what I think's happened is he's lied about his age to start with. He's had to carry that lie on throughout all the promotions and all the fights that he's had, so he didn't get found out. And now he's signed for the UFC. I think he's come clean and said, look, I did lie in the past. I'm 20 years old. Here's my birth certificate and everything. Now, there are some people that are thinking that he is older than 20 now and that he didn't lie in the past and something's wrong now. If that's the case, we're going to find out pretty soon, because when the UFC take Yadong, or if they take Yadong over to America, he's going to have major fucking visa issues if he's been lying now. So that's why I'm sort of edging towards, him being 20 years old now. But anyway, we went off on a tangent there. It's just a bit of a curious case. It's not something we see every day. Now, I think he's been fighting professionally since he was 15. The dude's got a lot of experience, so people will see him as 20 and think, he's young, he hasn't got that experience. He definitely has. He's been fighting for years. In regards to his skill set, he's a really, really competent striker. He's got great footwork, he's got great movement, he's got speed, he's got heavy hands, he's got a chin on him. He's an exciting fighter. We have seen glimpses of his ground game from his ONE FC days, but he was very, very young back then. We've got to take that into consideration. Having said that, he did look like he had an okay ground game. It wasn't anything brilliant, and it wasn't anything compared to Arantes' ground game. Now, this is the path to victory I'm most concerned about for this fight. I spoke about concerned path to victories with the Edwards fight, and I'm going to do it here. So I think Felipe Arantes, I think if this fight gets on the mat, with Arantes on top for long periods of time, I'm really going to be worried about the bet there. I didn't even mention I've got 2.5 units on Song Yadong at minus 116, by the way, just to stop any confusion there. So yeah, if Arantes is on top and spends long periods of time with Yadong on his back, I am going to be worried for the bet for sure. Arantes has got a very good submission game, and also if somehow Yadong takes him down or Yadong drops him and then ends up falling into Arantes' guard, I will be worried there. Arantes got he throws his legs up really, really well for submissions, triangles, arm bars, similar to what I mentioned with Cerrone. So that's definitely a concern here, because Arantes does sort of play for that and would entice the fighters to come into his guard, even though he's the one on bottom, or even pull guard himself. So there's a few things Yadong's really got to be careful of. But having said that, with the ground game, Arantes hasn't completed a takedown in 4 years. So, if he'd not completed a takedown in his last couple of fights, and he'd had a tough run or whatever, you could sort of bypass that and think, maybe those fights weren't right for him. Something maybe wasn't right. But 4 years is a long time to not complete a takedown when that's probably your best path to victory in those fights. So it's something that I have actually had to put stock into. When I'm totting up the fighters, am I going to make the bet or not? Do I trust that the fight's not going to hit the mat? I sort of do in a way, because, like I say, 4 years without a takedown when that's your path to victory is a little strange. Arantes' striking isn't terrible either. But what he doesn't cope with, again, similar to what I've mentioned with Cerrone, there's a lot of similarities here. What he doesn't cope with is forward pressure from his opponents really well. And one thing he does, and I hate to see this, I mentioned it in the UFC Liverpool podcast, and it was ultimately the reason I didn't bet Eric Spicely in that fight, is fighters that cover up when their opponents are really letting loose on them with combinations. And that is something that Felipe Arantes does, and he does it. I've seen it a couple of times. The last time he was doing it against Josh Emmett, he was moving backwards. The second he got hit with 1 or 2 shots against the cage, he covered up and just let the combination go, let it finish, and then circled out. Now, he didn't get knocked out in that fight. He got knocked down a lot of times in the first round, but he didn't get knocked down or knocked out because of that, because of covering up. But I'm telling you now, there's only so many times you're going to be able to do that without getting away with it, without getting caught and put down. And I think if he does that against Song, Song will be the type of fighter to select his shots a little better, to really find the opening in the guard, because there will be some openings, and just the pure raw power of the kid. He's got a lot of power, man. Like, go and watch tape on him. He's got so much power, and I think even if he's cracking the gloves, the Arantes' gloves that are right next to his head and his temple, I think even if he's cracking that, Arantes is definitely going to feel it. So this is something that I'm really hoping that, excuse me, something that I'm really hoping that Yadong does in this fight and really puts the pressure on him. I feel that along with his pressure game as well, he's got a really good judgment of distance. You see him especially in his last fight. In fact, in all of his fights that I've watched, his movement's really good, in and out. It's smooth, it's slick. There's nothing static about him or jolty or anything. It's just really seamless. He also hops back out of range when he senses a little bit of danger, even if it's a bit of a feint from his opponent. Hops back out. He doesn't take the chance, and this is what I like about him. He's a kid that I think he does like a brawl. We have seen him brawl in the past, but he seems to be fighting a lot smarter now. And like I say, moving in and out of distance perfectly, really judging that distance, really managing it, and it really works for him as well. I do see Arantes again crumbling under the pressure. Ultimately, I think Arantes will cover up when Yadong's put the pressure on him against the cage and starting to find a home with a couple of shots. I think that'll send Arantes into cover-up mode, where he'll just be waiting for combinations to end before he circles back out. But I think if he does that, he might get away with it once, maybe. I think if he does it a second time, I don't think he'll see the end of the combination in order to circle out, because I think he'll be on the mat with the referee on top of him after ending the fight. I think Yadong will let rip with powerful combinations. I think he will drop Arantes, and I think he will win by knockout. Just one thing to mention as well quickly is Yadong's actually moved over to Team Alpha Male for this camp, so I'm really interested to see the developments that they brought out the kid. They seem to do amazing stuff over there with the lower weighted fighters. I think someone like Yadong at the age of 20 or how 25, however old he is, I think he'll almost be a sponge whilst he's over there at Team Alpha Male. I think he'll be really soaking everything in, and I do think it'll reflect in his fight here. Now, interestingly, because this is a betting podcast, since I bet at -116. The line has gone the other way, and you can now actually get plus money on Yadong, which is just crazy. I mean, it's not totally crazy, but from what I've seen in the stylistic matchup, I really only see a small path to victory for Arantes here. I really don't see too much going for him in this fight. I think he's going to make a lot of mistakes, and I think we're going to see the best Yadong that we've seen ever, really. So I am a bit surprised he's gone to plus money, but anybody looking to bet this or tail the bet, he's at a great price now, man. So go and watch the tape before you bet it. Don't just take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure you'll see the same things that I've seen. Next up, we've got the last full breakdown of the card. So we've got Xaionan against Viviane Pereira. Now, I've got one unit on Xaionan at plus 200. Now, for a start, talking about the price here, she should never have been plus 200. I think she's plus 145, plus 150 now, which I still think is a great line, by the way, if anyone still wants to hit this. But she should never, ever have been plus 200. I know some people have even got better than that, so it was just a ridiculous line. I've only bet the one unit here. It's not because I'm not confident. It's the strategy that I'm playing, and I'll talk a little bit about that, because it's something that, I'll talk about it after this breakdown. It's something that I've never really mentioned on my podcast, how I bet, the strategy that I'm using, and it's working really well for me. I was on a 5-card losing streak a few months back, plus 6 units, 1% our return of investment on that. Now I'm looking at plus 42 units profit. I'm looking at 8% return of investment. So I changed my game up a little after I went on a bit of a losing streak, and the strategy isn't something I've mentioned, but I will talk about it a little bit after. So yeah, 1 unit plus 200. Now, Xiaonan's an exciting addition to the women's strawweight division. She's predominantly a striker with heavy hands, and she's always happy to enter a brawl, which in the women's division I don't hate so much because, excuse me, I've got a really terrible throat. I really don't hate a brawler in the women's division because it's not a division where there's a lot of knockouts. So, say for example, you're betting on a brawler at light heavyweight or heavyweight, you're gonna be fucking worried for your money because one shot's gonna win the night. Whereas that's not the case here. But what it does do is it always looks great for the judges when like I said it with Lineker when I bet Lineker a couple of weeks back. It's a similar thing with him. The volume and pressure and power really always looks great in the judge's eyes, even if he's missing shots or really not being the overall better fighter. It always looks great, and that's similar to Xiaonan here. Pereira, on the other hand, is also a striker. She didn't really impress early on in the UFC, but she did look a bit better against Moyle in a fight after that. Both women fight in an orthodox stance. Both utilise a pretty good jab as well. So they're both well schooled in striking for sure. The difference in the styles here, though, is Xiaonan likes to get inside the pocket, really work with solid combinations, whereas Pereira likes to move in and out of range, landing 1 or 2 shots at a time, sort of point fighting. Now, the reason I really favour Xiaonan here is because she does fight well on the counter, as well as being quite aggressive. So I think if Pereira's the one coming forward and moving in and out of range, I think that she can crack Pereira as she's moving into strike herself. Now, the other thing as well, I really like this. Xiaonan throws a really, really unorthodox lead sidekick to the head of her opponents, which isn't telegraphed at all. Like, you don't see it coming. It's really quick, and it's also got deceptive power on it. I don't think I've seen her drop anybody or knock anybody out with it, because she does it a lot in with the tape that I've watched. But it has got deceptive power. You can see it snaps the headbacks of the head back of her opponent. So, it's a really, really powerful weapon, and I think it's actually going to be something that could potentially stop Pereira and halt her game completely in this fight, because as that lead, she starts landing that lead sidekick to the face of Pereira as she's coming in, Pereira's going to start thinking twice. Once you start overthinking in the cage, it's really going to get bad for you. So yeah, I really like Xiaonan here. I think that I genuinely think she's going to win. It's not a case of me betting a fighter because it's a close fight at plus 200. I've said this on Twitter to somebody the other day, because they asked me if I'm betting for value on another fight, or if I genuinely think they're going to win, and my answer was I will never bet a fighter that I don't think is going to win. I won't bet for value. I know some people do. I get it. I get that. That's their strategy. But that's not my strategy. If I don't think a fighter is going to win, I will not bet that fighter, even if they're plus 1,000. If I don't think they're going to win, that's it. Simple as that. Now, ultimately, I do think that Xiaonan is going to be able to dictate the pace of the fight. I think she's going to decide. I think she's going to halt Pereira coming in, which is then going to enable her to decide when to come in and out of range. When she comes in, I think she's going to flurry. I think she's just going to look good in front of the judges, basically. I think it is going to be a close fight. But like I say, I just see Xiaonan looking... I think her style's just going to look really good in the judges' eyes. And I think they're going to give her the decision, potentially a unanimous one as well. So, yeah, I've got 1 unit at plus 200 on Xiaonan. Now, as I mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about my strategy for you guys. So what I normally try and do is I normally have like 5 or 6 leans before odds come out, before I've watched tape. So I normally have 5 or 6 leans on every card, and I'll tape those fights to see if my thoughts come out in tape, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But what I ultimately like to do, and this isn't always, I can't always guarantee that this is going to be the case, but it has seemed to over the last few months, and it has seemed to work, is I normally look for 3 bets. So whether that be straights or props, I don't normally play props too much. I've got a really, really good record on props actually. I think we're talking like over 30% return of investment on them. But I'm really selective when I play my props, play them at the right price, and also I tend to get a really good feeling on some props. But the majority of the time, if I don't really like it, I'll skip it. So I tend to look for 3 bets, which most of the time is 3 straight bets. Now, I'll play those units and I'll play the prices on those fighters in order for me to give myself a little bit of insurance. So what I mean by that is when I play these 3 fighters, I'll only ever need any 2 of them to win. Now, that's not me being unconfident in any of my bets. That's just me just giving myself a little bit of insurance to make profit. As I said, if I wasn't massively confident in the fight to win, if I wasn't that confident in them, I just wouldn't bet them. So it's not a case of not being confident. And if you've noticed and look at my record, I've been sweeping a lot lately. I think I've won the last 6 bets that I've made. So it's not a lack of confidence. It's just a bit of insurance. And it does work out. Now, where the 4th bet will come in, and this is what's happened with Xaionan, is if I can make, well, I'll talk about this strategy. I think I've got to use an example to explain it. So with this strategy this week, so I've got Edwards, Pedro, and Song Yadong. If the two that pay the least back into my bank, I've got roughly about, I think it's 1.25 units spare on that, so that's my profit. So if the two win that I think is going to win out the 3, but they're the 2 lowest, I've still got I'll profit 1.25 units. That gives me the opportunity to play a small 1 unit shot on a fighter where I think the odds are completely off, that I still think is going to win. So I'm not sure if this is making too much sense, but basically I've still got my strategy of 2 out of 3, but for that strategy, Xaionan in this case is the free play. Like if she loses that fight, it doesn't make a difference on my strategy. I'll still profit if 2 out of 3 come through. Now on the last card, I think at UFC 225, I didn't have that luxury, because if the 2 lowest won, it was sort of like 0.75 units profit. So I didn't really have anything to work with, but I did in this card. So that's sort of how my strategy works. I don't know if I've explained that very well. It makes perfect sense in my head, obviously, because I'm smashing it lately. I think I've won 9 out of the last 11 events. So, you know, I'm really on good form at the minute. I really know what I'm doing. My strategy's working really well. So, yeah, I hope I've explained that well. If I haven't, and you want to explain it to you again after this, just drop me a DM on Twitter, man, and you know I'll always respond. I'll always talk. So that's it for the full breakdowns. Anyway, we'll get off to the quick fire round. So the first one, we've got Jessica Rose Clark against Jessica I. The pick's Jessica Rose Clark here. I think she came in a bit of, you know, people didn't really like her, didn't really like her style. I think she's come into her own a little bit. I think she started looking a little bit better. The Paige Van Zandt win was still a bit sketchy, but ultimately, you know, you look at Jessica I, she's got a 12-6 record. It's not the best, but it's okay for the women's division. You know, it's sort of where most other women are. You know, I'm not being disrespectful to women. That's just the sort of records that they hold. For whatever reason, I've got no idea. But yeah, I just think Jessica Rose Clark might do more over 3 rounds and take the decision. Next, we've got Li Jingliang against Daichi Abe. Abe's someone that I'm not really that impressed with. He tends to be a 1-round fighter. I know that he got the win against Kim on his debut because he dropped him at the end of the 3rd. I think that was the wrong decision. Kim totally won round 2. He totally won round 3 up until the last 20 seconds where he got dropped, and the judges gave Abe the 3rd round just because he dropped him. I disagree with that. He was dominated the entire round until that. So I've not been massively impressed with him. Li Jingliang, I lost a bet on him against Jake Matthews in his last fight. You know, that didn't go the way I wanted it to, but I still think he's a solid fighter. And I think he'll have to I think it'll be a war in round one. It'll be a really good fight. I think Abe will end up gassing though, and I think at that point Li Jingliang will let his hands go, and I think he'll knock him out round 2 or 3. Next we've got Teruto Ishihara against Petr Yan. Petr Yan making his debut. Absolute monster. I really do think he's going to live up to the hype that that's been on him lately. But he's a plus 500 favourite. I'm not even gonna think about them odds. Same with Li Jingliang with the fight before. By the way, I think he's like minus 480 or something. So again, not playing that for that reason. But yeah, I think he's going to run through Ishihara. I don't think Ishihara is a great fighter. I think his time in the UFC is probably limited, and I think he's been thrown in to this fight for Petr Yan to get his name on the win column in the UFC and start his career. So yeah, I've got Petr Yan. I'm not sure whether he's going to finish him or if he's going to win by decision. Teruto Ishihara is reasonably tough. I'll go Yan by decision. Next we've got Rolando D against Shane Young. I actually take this fight for a potential bet on Shane Young. He's still my pick. I just couldn't bet it though. I think that he's a little, maybe a little hesitant, but I just don't think he is as quick and flurries as much as and flows as much as he should. He's a bit of a stop-start fighter, I think is the best way to describe it. Rolando D as well. He's a weird case. He can fight. He's well rounded. It wouldn't surprise me if D did end up taking the win in this fight, but my pick's Shane Young. I think he'll win by decision. Next we've got Song Kenan against Hector Aldana. Now, again, it's not a fight that I've massively looked into a lot here. We've got Song Kenan that was on the Beijing card, I think it was. He knocked out Bobby Nash in about 15 seconds. You didn't really get to see any of his game, so really tough to gauge that dude. And then you've got Hector Aldana, who's 4-0. Again, not fought anybody of absolute substance apart from his time on Ultimate Fighter. He did beat Alvaro Herrera, lost against Enrico Marin. Both fighters are just really tough to gauge in this spot, so it's really hard for me to be confident. So I'm going to go with Song Kenan. I think that the win against Bobby Nash was, I think that's all I'm really basing it on. Bobby Nash is a name that people know, and it was a good win for him. So I'll go with Song Kenan, and I think I'll go a decision. Next we've got Shinsho Anzai against Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews minus 500 favourite, probably rightly so. I don't know actually. Maybe it's a little bit off, but I think Matthews is going to win. I think he might even finish Anzai as well if he can get success with takedowns. If he can't, or if there's a lot of struggling for the takedowns and clinching and grappling against the cage, I think Matthews will just take it to a decision and win on points. But like I say, if he can get the takedowns, then I think that he could end up potentially finishing with a submission or ground and pound. Ultimately, I think that is what's going to happen, and I think Jake Matthews will win inside the distance. Next, we've got Matt Schnell and Naoki Inoue. I think I pronounced it right. If not, apologies. But yeah, I think Matt Schnell's live in this. He's a decent sized dog. I think he's like plus 160, plus 170 last time I looked. The issue I've got here is if Inoue gets it to the ground, he's gonna submit Matt Schnell, and I don't think there's any two ways about it. The reason I haven't bet it, because it is in the sort of bettable price range for Inoue, is I just don't think that his frame is that big yet. I think he's still got to fill out into his body. I sort of talked about it with Tyson Pedro earlier on, how he came to the UFC wasn't as big as he looks now, and I think the same thing is with Inoue right now. And I think if Matt Schnell could really make the fight physical, I think he could bully Inoue. I'm not sure Inoue would have a lot of success in the strength department here, and I just don't think he's the most fluent striker. Matt Schnell's definitely the better striker, but for some reason I do think this fight hits the mat, and I think Inoue submits match Schnell, but I can't bet it because I'm just not confident it will hit the mat. It's just a feeling that I've got. So Naoki Inoue by submission is the pick. Next we've got Jenel Lausa against Yuto Ulka Sasaki. Now Sasaki's a fighter that's really, really tricky. And I said it when he was due to fight Bibulatov a couple of months back. And I just think that Jenel Lausa, I don't see what Lausa's going to be able to do against Ulka Sasaki over the course of 3 rounds to really dominate him. I don't see him dominate Sasaki. I see Sasaki is really tall for the weight and for the division. I think he'll be able to keep range if he wants to. I think he'll be able to just pop shots at distance on Jenel Lausa. I think he's better on the mat, on his back, and on top as well. So I just feel wherever the fight goes, Sasaki will win. The reason I haven't bet it is because Sasaki is like minus 285. It's out sort of my rough price range of what I like to bet anyway, but also I don't think a fighter of Sasaki's stature warrants that right now. I think he's got a bit to. I think fighters have to prove themselves to a certain degree to then start justifying a price tag of, you know, your minus 300s, and I just don't think Sasaki's done that yet. But I do think he wins, and I think he might actually pick up a submission here, so I'll go Ulka Sasaki to win by submission. Finally, we've got Ji-Yeon Kim against Melinda Fabian. I've got no idea, man. I remember seeing Ji-Yeon Kim against Justine Kish. She got the win. I've got no idea how. I think that was an absolute brutal robbery. I don't use the R word very often, but I think it was a robbery. I can't really put it any other way. Then you look at Melinda Fabian. She's 4-3. Trains out of Budapest top team. Last fought against Diana Bennett, which was a draw. She got losses to Lucy Pudilova and Caitlin Chukagian. So again, I don't really know what to make of that. I've not taped it. I've got no interest in it. I'm going to pick Ji-Yeon Kim to win just because I think she did look okay against someone like Justine Kish, who I think is a decent fighter. A fighter that's probably going to be better than Melinda Fabian, even though I don't believe Kim won. It was, it's still competitive. So yeah, I'll go Ji-Yeon Kim to win by another decision. And that's all she wrote. So just a quick message. If you're listening to this podcast on the Newsome MMA YouTube channel, it's also available on the Newsome MMA website too, along with so much additional content surrounding all aspects of MMA. It really does have something for everybody on the website, from betting advice to prediction videos and podcasts, to specific content coming from the heavy duty fight management team. Also, I've just added the DraftKings section as well. I've got a couple of guys on board for that already that's going to be dropping content every single week for you guys. I know DraftKings it's not that huge over in the UK, but I know it's massive over America and Canada. So I feel like the Newsome MMA website is really going to benefit people that play DraftKings as well. So if you do play DraftKings, be sure to watch out for that content. Check it out. Follow me on Twitter as well at Newsome_MMA, because I'll be posting all the content as soon as it comes onto the website onto there. If you don't have Twitter, just keep an eye out on the website every day. It'll be on there for sure every single fight week. Also check out my sponsors of Newsome MMA, which is CBD Life UK. You can access their offers from my sponsorship by clicking any of the banners on the Newsome MMA website, and you can also get 15% off your first order by using promo code Newsome MMA. So don't miss out on that offer. And that's everything, guys. I hope you enjoyed the podcast after the break that we've had. Please like, subscribe. The channel is still really growing. It's growing really slowly. I'd like that to speed up a bit, and well, you guys can do that. And the people that have subscribed and everything, and all the support and all the nice comments that you leave me every week, I just want to thank you as well. So I'll see you next time, guys.